You may be too dumb. If you can't make games after this, give up. This is what the title of the video is. Clickbait? Might be clickbait. I don't know.
I'm gonna teach you how to make your own games. After this video, you will be a pro. The #1 lesson is, your game idea probably sucks. The faster you...
Wrong.
You let go of...
Maybe. It depends. If you're making a Vampire Survivors clone, your idea doesn't suck.
the GTA 6 in your mind, the faster you will learn. This will probably sound really harsh, but no matter how good you think your game idea is, it's probably bad. And listen, I'm not trashing on you, I'm just telling you how it is. I'm not gonna serve you bullshit. Lesson #2 is, you cannot escape programming. Games are literally computer programs. You can use visual programming languages, but you cannot escape programming itself. And for me, programming is the best part anyway, so why...
Yeah, like, I know that most people, or a lot of people that come into game development that only want to do art, they always try to shy away from programming, but oftentimes they learn that they actually enjoy programming a lot as well, because it's also like an expression of art, because you can display something or show something visually as well by doing programming, which is cool, you know. So, and it's not actually that difficult. I feel like most tutorials just make it that difficult. It's mostly about, if you don't know it, just explore and don't worry about too much making mistakes. I think that's one of the best advice that someone can give someone that doesn't know how to program or wants to learn how to program, but it's not given almost ever. They just talk about the basics and then tell you, okay, these are the best practices, try to follow them. Something like that, which basically confines you. So it's best to just explore and do whatever. It works. If it works, it works.
Would you run from it? Lesson #3 is always go in with a plan. No. Never make the mistake of opening a game engine and trying to learn it without a goal. You're just gonna
wrong. He's wrong. He's totally wrong. That's the best way to learn. He's never done that, probably. Now, what he means maybe by a plan is, I'm gonna do this and this and this. But let's say you wanna make a game, right? I always like the Vampire Survivors most. You go and you wanna make a Vampire Survivors clone. Well, what do you need to do for that? Well, you need to have a character that's moving around, right? In, let's say, top down. Vampire Survivors is 2D top down, something like that, Stardew Valley style, right? Experimentation, exactly, Red Side says it. Experimentation is the best way, because you will learn, you will undoubtedly make mistakes in the engine. You will break things, you will do things wrong, but you will learn what to make, what to not make, and what to do by doing that. And I have learned myself after, you know, trying Unity in the past and then switching to C++, and now lately trying out Godot with you guys and then also trying out other programming languages. The more you experiment, and that goes into like what I said earlier, the better you get. You learn so much faster than reading. Obviously you still have to read documentation to find stuff, but reading or watching a bunch of tutorials that explain things to you, you forget like 90%. Because you just don't need it. Because for your use case, let's say making a character walk, you don't need 80-90% of this other stuff. And it's usually just a time waste. Now, you learn a little bit by watching it and you feel smart, but you don't make any actual progress. So, like, explore, man, explore. Like,
be overwhelmed by the amount of options and information that you need to take in. The first time you open a game engine, you should already have a game idea in mind. Something very simple like a Mario clone or a Pong clone.
I mean, that's true.
Before we move on to lesson #4, I want to give you a few tips for your first games. You need to make at least 3 very simple projects. You're only supposed to learn from them. These are not things you're gonna release or show anybody.
You can even
just
start.
Learn.
Like, I know what he means. I started with Pong. Right, that was my first game when I went serious. When I was like, okay, I've been learning C++ for a while now. I've been learning game development for a while now. My very first game that I tried to make was a 3D game, Witcher 3 actually. Didn't work out at all, obviously, right? But then I made Pong and I completed my first game and I felt tremendously overpowered. I felt like I've just turned into a Super Saiyan. I was so confident that I immediately sprung into my next game, which was a tower defense game. Just make Witcher 3 first game, yeah. So, he's right. You should start small, but I still think a game like Vampire Survivors is a small enough game that you could start with, that is actually something that is a real game instead of just a Pong game.
They all have to be very different from each other. For example, you can make a Pong clone and then a Super...
No, I don't believe that. So, like, here's what I think. They don't have to be different at all. Let's say you have like, it depends, right? If you don't know what you want to do, yes. If you know what you want to do, like, for example, in my case, I knew that I wanted to make a tower defense game. Now, I made Pong first, but then immediately I went for tower defense. I should have probably made a smaller tower defense first, which actually I did. When I was like 22, 24, 25, I made a tower defense game in Unity. But I never finished it. But I actually started one and it had like a couple of months progress. You know, it had units walking to waypoints and stuff and towers shooting at the units. I think that's how far I got. So if you know what you're doing or what you want to do, what type of game you want to do, you should probably do clones or smaller games of that, smaller versions of that game to get more proficient at that genre. It's the same thing with Dark Souls, right? It only went better over time. So essentially, try to make small games is the best thing to do still. Like, because it gives you something you have completed, right? You can always reference that and be proud.
Super Mario clone because they are really different in gameplay terms. As a third option, you could probably make a top-down shooter or something you want to make. Here it's important to understand that your games are going to be really bad and that you're going to have a ton of difficulties. You can try to do things on your own, but if you feel too stressed, watch tutorials, man. Don't let your ego control.
Nah, like if you feel too stressed, this is what happened to me. Your scope is too big. You need to cut scope. If you feel burned out, then you probably have too much scope. And that means you're making too little progress. And what can happen is, oftentimes that is what happened to me. I made my tower defense game in a particular art style. And maybe I still have some pictures. So essentially I started... Like, this is literally the same game. This is the main menu right now. It changed completely from the previous main window. That's a huge change, right? And back then when you used to play, it looked like this, right? It was a completely different art style to the art style I have right now. It's a huge difference. Obviously this is a bit darker because I'm supposed to click on this and then it's brighter, right? There was a tutorial here and then it shows me, you can't see it, but it shows me this blinking button here. And now essentially what I did is I made the same game twice. I made this game, failed in finishing it, scratched everything, not everything, but a lot of stuff, and made it again. So essentially, but I've gotten better at doing it. And this is what I mean. If you make different games, then you will have a bunch of different games, but you don't have something that you actually want to do. Like, it does help you learn a lot of different skills, right, for different types of games. But it doesn't, you really get good at something if you work on one thing. If you like, it's like, have you ever heard the saying that I fear not the guy who practice 1,000 kicks, but the one who practice one kick 1,000 times or 10,000 times? That's essentially the same thing. And let's say you really want to make a Vampire Survivors clone. If you make a bunch of Vampire Survivors clones, right, you will get incredibly good at making those. Because you will understand what type of abilities work and what don't, what type of upgrades work and what don't. And the only thing that can stop you is burnout if you work on the same game. So that is what happened to me. I got burned out from this game because I kept reworking the game. Especially since it's written in C++, but you can have this in normal engines as well. If your code sucks, if you get to a point where you can't really continue, you can't add weapons easily, then you will have a hard time rebuilding that, not seeing any progress for months, and still working on the game. This is the most difficult part. This is when most people quit. They see their game doesn't go anywhere. They're like, shit, I should either make a new game or I need to rewrite this, but it will take months. I don't make 1,000 games, I make the same game 1,000 times, Cakez. Yeah, just watch, you know. I'm gonna make a good tower defense game. But yeah, anyways, his advice isn't really that wrong. Like, I don't wanna shit on it, right? If you make different games, you will obviously learn different skills, which is true. Good morning, Desayo. Hello there. A good programmer would use version control and use tags releases to find the milestones. Shut up.
You allow yourself to do hard things, just not in the hardest possible way, you know. Lesson number 4, avoid tutorial hell, please. You shouldn't really worry about...
No, you can't avoid tutorial hell. That's literally just what happens. Like, every person goes through tutorial hell. It's just realize you are in tutorial hell. And once you realize it, stop all tutorials. Just think... You know that you are in tutorial hell when you are trying to find a specific solution to your specific problem. Let's say you want to move your character, that's like a general problem, but the character jumps every 2 seconds. For some reason, right? He jumps every 2 seconds. That's your gameplay. Now that is a specific problem and it requires a specific solution. Yeah, it jumps every 2 seconds, right? That is a specific problem for that requires a specific solution. And you won't be able to Google that. And you'd realize that you are in tutorial hell when you spend 5 hours Googling that same answer and you can't find anything that fits your problem, then you're in tutorial hell. Because then you're trying to do something new that has never been done before, and the only solution is your solution. Everyone will get in tutorial hell. It just happens because you want to learn, right? You want to find someone that is smarter than you to teach you. The best advice here is, again, to just explore. Try things out your way. Before you even watch any guides or tutorials or documentation on the internet, first try to find your solution. Because that is usually the right one. Maybe not the best, the most performant, but the right one.
About this in the first 3 games that we were talking about earlier.
It has to happen,
you were just learning the very basics. But after that, it's time to be careful with tutorials that teach you an entire thing, like an entire game type or an entire game mechanic. Because you could become dependent on those tutorials and never really learn how to make your own systems in your own types of games.
No, what happens is you waste your time. That's just it. You watch the tutorial for 90%. You don't give a shit about what's been said in the tutorial, and then maybe 10%, maybe 5%, maybe 2% is actually what you need. And that is what happens to me when I watch a tutorial lately on the internet. I get triggered so much because it contains so much information I don't really care about, and I Google specifics, and it takes like 10 minutes to find the one code line that you're looking for, which at that point you probably have outgrown tutorials.
Games. As I said,
you want to make a game in C, but don't know the
language
at all. Do I just jump in there without tutorials? So this is what I would do. If you wanted to do a game in C++, I would do 2 things. I would watch a basic C++ tutorial to explain you the basics of the language. And then I would watch a game tutorial that teaches you how to make a game in C++. So that is hopefully containing a build system, a graphics library, or how to do graphics, and then actually making the game and finishing it up and packaging it. That is what I would do, and then I would jump into making games completely out of without tutorials, because you have already seen how to make a game, right? It has been taught to you, and now it's time to experiment on your own. Like, obviously you can find your own way as well, right? Without any tutorials, but you should at least know the basics of, let's say, C++, right? And that can only be taught by watching a basic tutorial. And then you can choose which language features, whatever you want to use on your own, right? But if you're a complete beginner, you will still go through the tutorials. That's just how it works. You watch tutorials until you realize you don't need tutorials anymore. YouTube tutorials are for people with a low attention span? No, that's not true. There's many good YouTube tutorials that teach you how to make certain things. And like what I can recommend for C and C++ the most is Handmade Hero and Jonathan Blow. because they teach you to actually do stuff instead of just saying fancy words or making you hype up for something.
Still recommend you watch tutorials, but very specific tutorials like how a specific component works in Unity or a node in Godot. This way you can still avoid the stress of something that is way beyond your capacity, but still learn how to do things your own way. So to definitely escape tutorial hell, I recommend you make a 4th game. This time you can even show people and ask for feedback.
This is too
but the most important thing is being something new and that you don't watch tutorials for the whole thing, just for specific things, as I said. Lesson number 5 is explore new territory, always. When I was starting, I spent months learning Unity and I would never try anything else. I was making progress, but I felt like I was too dependent on Unity itself as a tool.
Yeah,
and so I decided to learn Godot. It was very stressful at first, but once I understood the engine and the differences between the two, I realized that I was way better after this. Learning Godot made me value more the overall concepts of game development and programming.
Learning Godot made me value my C++ project so much more. Oh my god. Oh yeah, learning Godot made me realize that, yeah, actually I want to write my game in C++, yeah. Yep.
Godot's documentation even focuses a lot on the history of game development and why things are done, and that helped me a ton. This experience made me a better game developer all around. Lesson number 6 is focus on the process. I know this sounds cliche, but game development is a craft, and you have to focus on the craft, not on the reward for the craft. I know you want to do this for a living.
You want to make a good game, essentially. Exactly. If you're in it for the money, obviously you can, right? I would suggest, again, the Vampire Survivors clone. These play very well, even on the phone, if you can. But at the end of the day, you would want to make a good game, and then you will. If you're really in it to make a good game, you eventually will make a good game. Because you won't take shortcuts. And you won't be satisfied unless your game has, for example, bugs fixed and done, right?
Your first game is probably gonna flop financially, but it's not gonna flop in your eyes if it's good and if you learned something from it. Focusing on making better games is the only way to withstand failure and eventually achieve success. And I promise you, if you make good games, they will be appreciated. After you follow all the steps in this...
No, he forgot something very important. Look at games in your genre and see what they do that is successful. And then do the same thing, but in your way. It's not yoinking. It is essentially learning from someone that's better than you. And understanding why they did what they did. Why do I say that? Stardew Valley, inspired by... What is this game called? This Harvest Moon? Animal Crossing? Harvest Moon. Yeah. So, Stardew Valley, inspired by Harvest Moon. Tried to make the original Harvest Moon that he loved the most. Try to remake that. Incredibly successful. No one is telling him right now that he made a Harvest Moon clone. No one. Why not? Because it's a good game. And he made the same game, but his version. Right? He obviously copied certain things from the game because he knew that they are really good and these are the ones he likes. But no one talks about it, right? No one really cares because the end product is a good product. And so what he really missed here is if you know you want to make a certain game, then you need to take a look at other games and see what they do and what they don't do. Obviously, you still have to explore and try out certain things and they will fail. For example, today, what I will do is we will implement a certain version of acquiring items in the game. I don't know if that will work. If it doesn't work, we'll have to find a better way. Yeah, anyways, I think it's a good video still. He left... It's too basic, unfortunately, but that's just how YouTube is, right? It's no real actionable steps. Because it has to be general to include a bunch of use cases. Maybe when my game is out, I will do a video like that too. But there's no point in making a video like this right now. I first need to prove to myself and to others that I can actually finish and sell a game. I've already made a game on Steam. It's out there, right? People can see it and play it. But I still need to be able to sell the game as well. People need to actually buy the game and see value in it.
This video you can probably start making your dream games, but don't allow yourself to become too attached to a single game idea. Remember, you have to become a fountain for good games. Only one is not gonna
No. You can't learn all of the different game mechanics, man. Why is From Software so good? Because they keep making Dark Souls. They keep making Dark Souls. They don't make and go and try to make a Starfield. They make Dark Souls and more Dark Souls and Dark Souls DLC and Elden Ring DLC. And they're so fucking good. They're miles ahead of everyone else because they focus on the one genre that they excel at. How about Armored Core? Still, Armored Core is still a series, right? It's not just, oh, we made Dark Souls and now we made Armored Core. They made, that's not true, Cakez. Look how Telltale ended. Okay, well, I'll try to look at Telltale.
Anywhere. In the beginning, you're gonna feel like you are not ready to make that one game that you always wanted to make, but you are. It's just that you don't want that game to flop, so that's why you'll never make it. If you flop with that one, you can always make a better one, and then people will appreciate your first one because of who you are. Alright.
There it is, guys. 4 minutes. Now you guys know how to make games, right? You guys know how to make games now? Now go make games, okay?